Welcome to Spiritual as Fuck,
Spiritual as fuck.
a podcast where we explore everything outside of the ordinary. I'm Liz Volpe. I'm a social entrepreneur, now psychic medium, teacher and mentor, with a huge passion to inspire people to dream big and change the world.
I'm Diane Driscoll, a coach, facilitator and speaker. I'm also a psychic intuitive, learning to incorporate my spiritual gifts into my life and business.
We're here today to share real and raw spiritual stories. It's going to give you a safe space to challenge what's normal and have some serious fun along the way.
We hope you're ready to get spiritual as fuck. In this episode, we interview the amazing Ali McKelvie, a pioneer on the frontier of cosmic love, mind-body mastery, and conscious evolution and growth. She is a highly sought-after speaker, intuitive consultant and healer, and a renowned dating and relationships expert. She is the founder of the Wing Woman Collective and the host of Why the Fuck Am I Still Single podcast, which explores love and conscious connections. Ali is a former federal agent. She has defied death on 4 occasions and has had thrilling adventures across 64 countries. She has a broad range of psychic gifts which amplify the work that she does. She's a certified kinesiologist, German new medicine and NLP practitioner, and an expert in human design. As an intuitive consultant and dating and relationship expert, she has dedicated her life to understanding and harnessing the power of the human mind and spirit. With such an expansive range of experience and expertise, we found it almost impossible to hone in on one single topic. So join in on the conversation and let's see where this takes us.
So welcome back to Spiritual as Fuck. And as always, we definitely have a guest that fits underneath the umbrella of the Spiritual as Fuck title here. Now, Ali, who you are going to hear from today, is super interesting. And I just want to kind of start by saying we first brought Ali on to talk about the subject of love and relationships, which we're definitely going to mention at the end. But when I heard Ali's actual story, it blew my mind. And I said to Diane, how on earth can we speak to Ali without actually sharing some of her story? Because it's just incredibly inspiring. And I know that Ali's background, you come from a Catholic background, Ali. You're super psychic. You used to work for the federal police. I mean, oh my God. And we can't wait to delve into that. And as well as that, you've got loads of experience in lots of different modalities, you know, leading up to what you do today with your interest in human design and relationships. So where do we start? Let's go all the way back. So firstly, welcome, Ali. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, ladies. It's so nice to be here.
So let's start with you. You're a little girl. You grew up on a farm. Is that right? Tell us about you as a little girl and, you know, how, I guess, this spirituality started to play out in your life.
Yeah, sure. So I grew up on a farm down near Wagga. Wagga to be exact, down in southwest New South Wales. A very large property. So it's a family property that's been in generations for quite some time now. And, you know, that usual farming Catholic family with lots of children running around and all the rest of it. And looking back now, knowing human design and things like that, and doing everyone's charts, I was the only projector in a family of 7, and the rest of them were all generators of some kind. So for me, just being in that kind of energy and in that kind of family where I felt very unseen a lot of the time, and I had a lot of experiences that didn't really fit the mold of where I grew up. I have very beautiful, loving parents and siblings, and love them all, but just by far the black sheep.
Wow.
So growing up in that and just seeing things, you know, like I would see spirits or I would see and hear things in that when I was a child. There was times where we had someone, a very close family member, pass away, and I was riding my horse at the time, and I got this message that something was wrong and I needed to go home. And then I ran in and I was like, oh, is Dad okay? And Mum's like, yeah, he's fine. And then he came home and he was like, actually, I've got to go because our friend had accidentally shot himself in the head. And when I was riding my horse, I had that vision, and I actually thought it was my dad at the time, because it happened out on a farm, getting over a fence and things like that. And I just, every time something like that would happen, I was kind of told, it was really pushed away and don't be so silly, or, that's not real. I've seen UFOs out there and things like that. And there has just been so many experiences growing up that really pushed down that sense that I had. So very much clairvoyant, clairsentient when I was younger. I guess it was just conditioned out of me growing up in the Catholic faith. Like, my parents are still devout Catholics, and which is beautiful as well. It's just that I had a different path, right? So
Did you used to share these experiences with your family? Like, what did they say?
So I did share with them. I remember a number of times, sharing things and just being like, feeling like I was really stupid, like, don't be so silly. That doesn't happen, because they didn't see it. They didn't understand it. Yeah. And so I guess after a period of time, I stopped seeing and I stopped believing. And, there was a big period, sort of in my probably teenage years where I really didn't delve into that. It was just very much pushed away. And I remember being very like explosive and angry as a child. And I think it was just from not being seen or heard or recognized, which is my signature in my human design. So it's just looking, when you have hindsight and you look back on all that, and you can really see why things unfolded the way they did. But it was all meant to be that way, right? So growing up was beautiful, being out on a farm and riding horses and everything all the time, but sometimes hard because of that big factor.
So fast forward for us then. So like, obviously a lot of that ends up being suppressed. So if it's not understood within a family, and of course, their experience is different to yours, how then did, if we fast forward to you've gotten through, your teenage years where you're maybe pushing this down, was there a particular awakening? Was there something that then brought this back with a bang, so to speak?
There absolutely was. I think, like, most people on this journey. I do also, just as a side note, I just remember, like, my dad, because he's been a farmer his whole life, he took over the farm when he was like 13 years old. And he knows the earth, right? So he's very in tune. And I remember going out in the ute with him so many times, and he'd just talk about, the cycles and how the earth works, and how, with the moon and planting and just all these things that now I take for granted, like back then I took for granted, right?
Yeah. And there's a spirituality in that. Like when we talk about spiritual as fuck, there's different manifestations of spirituality, and that is a huge, earth spirituality.
Absolutely. Like, he does water divination.
Yes.
He did all that. And so I know that a lot of this stuff has come through him. Like, and he is very spiritual and very like switched on in that way, but he has always suppressed it. And I did a session with him recently, and I told him all this because he had a sore back. That's how I got him in. And suckered him in. And I just told him all this stuff about, like, his great-grandfather who had left the family, and that's where this had come from, like, this trapped emotion had come through his DNA. Yes. And he was like, how do you even know that? Like, I literally just told Helen, like my mum, that only like a couple of days ago. How could you know that? And he was just like, what? But he really believed it. And it wasn't just like, he instantly was like, and then his back was completely fine. So that
must have felt really nice for you, just to kind of get that, I guess, that feeling from your dad. Well, I do believe it. That's incredible. Was that a moment for you both?
The validation, yeah.
Absolutely. And it's really great that you brought that up, because I have really noticed that in the last probably, I would say 5 years in particular, I have really practiced fearless expression. Wow, and that is where my gifts have just skyrocketed to being that this is who I am. This is who I came here to be. Yes, that's how I grew up and that's how they see things, but that's not me and that's okay. And not having to validate myself to them or prove myself.
Yeah.
And in doing that, oh my God, they are my biggest like fans ever. Like mum is always calling me about like homeopathy or like, what do I do for this? Or can you heal this for us? You know,
but
like.
I love that, because for anyone listening, and this is as much for myself as anyone else, it shows that when we suppress who we are, people don't interact with us authentically either. But the minute you have, because I just wrote it down, fearless expression, when you embrace fearless expression, then it's like that was what unlocked the more authentic relationships with family, that you know, they get, there's an energetic exchange that happens with that when you're living in your truth and you're being authentic to who you are. So for anybody who's out there, again, this is as much for me as anyone else, but if you're suppressing that and if you're trying to keep yourself in a certain mold, whether it's within a, you know, like Catholic or a religious upbringing or, you know, societal expectations or family expectations, it's like smash it out, move on, go and, you know, have your fearless expression, because everything else, the right relationships will flourish under those conditions anyway. And the ones that fall by the wayside were probably the ones that you didn't need to interact with anyway.
Oh my gosh, it's so spot on, Diane. Like you literally just nailed the journey that I've been on. You know, it really was about when you truly open up that authentic voice of who you are and let that soul really shine of who it came here to be, and you're in alignment with that, then everything just unfolds, and the freedom that comes with that, there is no other feeling like it, because that is where you have true self-worth. And that is how you actually heal yourself. You know, my thyroid healed, my fibromyalgia healed, like all these things healed just through understanding what the body does through like my modalities and GNM and things like that, but mainly in terms of that full expression and just being you. And like I'm a Leo, man, like I've got a roar. That's who I am. And so I was never able to roar. I wanted to go to NIDA and be an actress, and you know, that's all I ever wanted. And I was told, no, we don't do that in our family. We don't do drama. And you know, and there's no hard feelings whatsoever about that, because I am where I am and I'm where I'm meant to be.
Can I ask another layer to this question? So obviously, you know, we talk about being the fullest expression or that fearless expression of ourselves. And, you know, on some level, we all know that to be true. We can feel that deep in our soul, but we're not born necessarily knowing that. We don't grow up knowing exactly what that is. So we go through a journey of uncovering and unpacking to come to that point. And you know, we were talking about some of these big bang moments for you for when this has occurred. When, like, almost like, what were the series of things that you went through, or the, you know, the moment where that happened? Because I do feel it is like that onion. There's layers and layers and layers of uncovering, and you know, it's unlikely that it's going to happen to you at 17 years old. There's a little bit of maturity that comes with this as well. So can you just share a little bit for people who are thinking, okay, it's great to talk about authenticity and being your authentic self, but I'm still figuring me out. And I am one of these people who is still, I feel like this is a never ending process. I'm constantly trying to figure myself out, and I'm okay with that. But for some people, we feel like we need to be there right now, and other people are authentic, and why am I, or why am I still trying to figure this out?
Yeah, for sure. Look, I guess the biggest one, the biggest big bang, if you like, and then the rest of evolution came along with it, with my life in this lifetime, was around the age of 23. I had a very traumatic thing happen to me, and it was huge. It changed the trajectory of my life completely. And at the time, I'm not going to go into that right now, because that will be for further down the road, but it was just big enough to completely change my life. And I did at one stage feel like I couldn't go on, like I had to, you know, end my life because of that. Yeah. And so getting through all that, and then the little synchronicities that came along the way, that particular thing that happened, I eventually started to see the blessings in that, in how it shifted course for me, right? And so I was a very big traveler. So I've traveled to, I think, nearly 70 countries.
Wow.
And I worked for Contiki Tours in Europe for like 4 years when I was younger. And so for me, it was like traveling was almost my way of processing and finding out who I am in different places and really pushing myself out of my comfort zone. But then 2 years after that happened, I went to South America. I actually won a trip. I'm pretty lucky like that. I'm about to win a house, just so you know.
She said it here.
Just throwing it out there.
There it is. So I traveled to all these places and I never, ever got sick. I was just always so healthy and just vibrant and all the rest of it. And when I went to South America, I got halfway up the Inca Trail along Dead Woman's Pass, ironically. And I had what I thought at the time was an anaphylactic reaction to Diamox, the altitude sickness tablet. And I was taken off the mountain and I woke up in Cusco. So for those of you who aren't familiar with South America, Cusco is a long way from where I was. And I was taken out of there, taken off the mountain and woke up not really remembering what had occurred. And then obviously when I woke up, I was still quite ill, but I was like, no, I want to keep going. So about 5 days after that happened, we went on a boat ride for 5.5 hours and stayed on a self-sufficient island in the middle of Lake Titicaca. I was still feeling pretty unwell. And when we got there, I was like, oh, this is so cool. Just this whole experience is just so surreal. We didn't have any mobile phones with us. It was just complete. And for those of you who don't know, Lake Titicaca is known as the sacral chakra of the earth. Yeah. And at that time, I did not know that. And so that night when we stayed with this local family, I felt like I was going to die. I was so sure I was going to die. I felt so unwell. And my ex-husband, he was my boyfriend at the time, but my ex-husband was with me. And we were staying in these beds of rock, just like cement with some straw, so comfortable. That's probably why I thought I was going to die. I was like, okay, wow, this is it. I'm literally going to die here. And I had just fully surrendered and accepted that. And what I did was I actually wrote a letter to my parents. No one else, just to my parents. And I just literally in that letter was all about how much I love them, how much gratitude I have for them, no matter what, the appreciation and just the pure love that I have for them. And I went to sleep thinking I'm never going to wake up because I really felt like that. And then when I woke up,
the relief. Oh God.
Feeling your fingers, feeling your toes.
My whole face was completely swollen, like I couldn't see out my eyes.
Oh, wow.
And I'm pretty sure my kidneys had completely shut down. Anyway, they got me back to, eventually got this boat ride back to, wherever La Paz. No, I can't even think about where we're staying right now, but the main city. And then, I went on my journey and I was just like, eventually I got back to Australia and I was just still so unwell. And it sent me, the doctors were like, oh yeah, you will have that for 20 years. Like, what? And so I was like, well, until this point I was into Western medicine, right? And so, because that's all I knew. And so someone said, why don't you go see a naturopath? And within 3 to 6 weeks, I felt $1 million. I took the worst tasting herbs ever possible. Yeah. But just felt amazing. And that then started me on my alternative health.
Yes. Yes.
And so
I love it.
I became a naturopath because literally I had done so much study outside of being a naturopath that I was like, I might as well monetize this. But in the end, I didn't use that anyway. I did a little bit, but it was not my calling. It was just my foundation for everything else. So that was just that was the first near-death experience.
The first near-death I'm so interested. Where on earth then did the federal police fit into this story? Because it's so off track, to, I guess, where the universe was taking you. Saying that, we find, and we've interviewed a lot of people on the podcast that, having these incredible psychic gifts or clairvoyant gifts and this these beautiful able to contribute to the world in a different way, end up finding themselves in, you know, a job like a lawyer. We interviewed a lady called Alicia a little while ago, and she was a lawyer. Or we had David the medium, who came from the government, and now we've got someone from the federal police. So there's definitely a theme here. But tell us about, you know, how that worked out, because I know that you actually got the name Gypsy whilst working at the police as well. So how did you use your gifts in the police?
A lot, actually. It's actually something I've only just recently started to speak about, purely because of, you know, my time in there and how people would take that, and I just wasn't ready for the backlash. And now I'm like, bring it. So I actually got into New South Wales Police when I was 18 years old, because I wanted to be, after being an actress, I wanted to be a police officer, a little bit different. And my dad really didn't want me to do it. He was just like, it's just not something I want my daughter to do. He's just like, I can't bear the thought of that. So for the first time in my life, I listened to my parents, and I went off and went overseas and did Kentucky. But then when I got back from there, I worked for Flight Center and a few, you know, places like that.
Yeah.
And I was just like, this itch of being a police officer just never left. And then I got in as a temp, just doing like security vetting work initially. And then whilst being in there, I had the opportunity to apply and go through and see if I wanted to become a federal agent. And so I did. And so working in both corporate and then also as a federal agent for 16 years, I really feel like I've seen everything. More than anyone you'd see in a day, more than what anyone would see in their entire life. Yeah. And you see, you know, the absolute worst situations you can possibly imagine, but then there's also days where you save people's lives, and there is no feeling like that. Yeah, so I just knew that it was something that if I didn't try it, if I didn't give it a go, then I would regret it. And I'm a 3-5 in my human design. The 3-line is all about learning through experience and having to do something to know whether it's right for you or not.
Yeah.
Turns out it was and it wasn't, if you like. So especially during the federal agent time, going to those jobs and just being in the energy of that as a non-energy type, doing shift work, and that was really hard. But I have what's called an open emotional center in my human design, and is very much, I feel what others are feeling. Say they feel it at a 4, you know, I'm going to feel it at an 8, what they're feeling at an 8.
So you're already amplifying what their experience is. Yeah.
And that's just not emotion. That's also, think about fear, right? Yep. So if someone is in that state where they're holding a knife at you, they are petrified. And so how is that going to reflect back to me in order to be able to hold my presence and stay in?
Oh God, that's crazy.
And so I really wish I had a known human design back then. But no, I did not. And so, you know, there were many, many times where I won't go into the gory details on here because there are some really big things. But I was also very guided and very looked after, if you like. So things like if we got, you know, called to a death or whatever, I would know that morning that there was going to be a death on my team, like
beforehand.
with my team.
It was like the spirit guide knocking on the door. Don't go in today.
Every time.
Or preparing you for it to know that it's coming.
Preparing me and then letting me go off on a job so someone else had to take it. That's like, that's what I know, naughty, right? Don't tell any of my ex-colleagues. They used to always say to me, you know, like, oh, why you are like, how do you, when was your last death? Like, how do you, I was like, oh,
wow.
Yeah. Just so lucky. Things like that. I mean, obviously I did go to things like that, but I've seen souls leave bodies. I've been there at a time where to actually help someone transition. Yeah. And I guess the biggest way in which I used it was when I'd have a missing person case. And so I would often tune in and know whether they're alive or not. And so like just preparing people and myself for that and how to go through that, but just kind of like bypassing all the protocol and finding them really, really quickly through my sense. Yeah.
Can I just ask a question on that, being a fellow intuitive? So when you're when you're saying that, I'm thinking that as a clairsentient, so feeling information, when you're tuning in on, is this person alive or not, you're feeling a yes. And then are you getting any type of like clairvoyant information on like a location or, you know, where somebody's located? Tell us about those senses and how that information comes.
Yeah, sure. It's actually a mix of the four, but my dominant ones, especially now, is clairaudient
Okay.
and clairsentient,
So
probably.
you're hearing the answer.
I hear, yes. Claircognizance and clairaudient is very strong now.
Yeah.
Back then, it was more claircognizance and clairsentient. So now I hear everything. Like,
So when you
now
shared this information to your colleagues,
I didn't.
so did you do it in
Oh.
kind of a way that you were suggestive and or you'd
Yeah.
go and kind of like search it for yourself and figure out that you were right?
Yeah, there was a couple of times. So there was one time where we'd gone to a guy's house. He was in his 40s and he had a hearing aid, and he had left, you know, his phone, his wallet, his keys, his hearing aids, everything to suggest that he had gone, right? And they were like, oh, you know, we're going to be looking for a body. And I was like, no, he's still alive. And they're like, what? And they're like, well, that makes no sense because look at the evidence, right? And I was like, no, I know it. And he's at the Labour Club.
Wow, so you were specific.
And they're like, well, I said, can you just trust me on this one? Like, can we just go have a look? And the person I was working with was like, righto. I said, work with you enough times, I think. And so we went to the Labour Club and we walk in, and the person at the desk just points at like this little corridor, and then there he is sitting outside the toilets, like on this little bench seat, crying. And he just looks up at me and he goes, how did you find me? How did you know I was here?
Oh my God. And what did your partner look like?
Sheepish.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's pretty incredible. There's me thinking I'm really good finding my husband's missing car keys.
Exactly. This is a whole other scenario, a whole other level. But it feels like, Ali, you have been put into these extreme circumstances. Like, absolutely. You mentioned about, you know, some of the best things that would occur as part of your time in the federal police, but also, you know, some of these horrific things, and not just things that you're seeing that for any, I'm going to use the word normal, but for the average person going into those situations, but going in with your heightened self of awareness and being able to, you know, take on board what other people are feeling. It's like, you know, you started off the conversation talking about the fact that, you know, not feeling, you know, seen, heard or understood as a child and having a lot of that suppressed. And then you go into a workplace where you're in the federal police, where everything is following process, following protocol, the chain of, you know, custody, all of those things that you need to follow. Yet your whole essence of who you are and how you operate was operating in a very different way. So again, you're pushed into these extremes to have that fearless expression where you turn around one day and you say to your partner that it's like, no, trust me, this is where it is. It's like you have, you know, the universe is orchestrated to put you into these situations. So at some point, you were coming more and more out of your shell, I imagine, and being more and more authentic in your self-expression of what you were finding. What was that like, the decision-making process to say, fuck it, I am just going to say what it is I'm feeling, what I'm sensing, because I know, like, that claircognizance, that clair, you know, you feel it, also clairsentient in your bones, you know that this is true.
Yeah. You know, the biggest advice, Diane, that I can give people around developing that and being able to just really step into that is just practice, is actually just doing it. And then the more you do it, it just becomes like this second immediate response, or not even second, it's your first response, right? So for me, it's just been this unfolding of, okay, I know this and I know that intuition, and my soul speaks very quietly and quickly, and I need to express it through my throat. And so if I don't do that, I had Hashimoto's. That's how I healed it, right? So was being able to just speak that truth. And you know what? If you're wrong, who cares?
Exactly.
Who cares? It's about trusting that intuition. It's about just trusting yourself, because you're not being told these things or being shown these things for no reason, you know. And so with, you know, my other near-death experiences, each one of them obviously put me into the craziest position ever. Like I've actually been in 3 aircraft that have almost crashed. One, I actually did an emergency landing in a helicopter in the middle of on a remote island in the middle of Solomon Islands, where there were like inhabitants that had never seen anyone outside of that island.
Wow.
And they came out with, like, it was like a scene from Lost. They came out with like machetes and all these kind of like weapons that they had made, and they just surrounded us. And we had like 1 Glock, and they had all these. It was like, I don't know, 100 of them. And yeah, and so we get out, and just that day we had actually picked up someone who was from a local tribe, who was a police officer from the Royal Solomon Island Police Force. And he was on the chopper. We were taking him back to Honiara. And it was just because he was with us, he was able to, like, he couldn't speak exactly that dialect, but enough to be able to
communicate.
They could see him, obviously. And then they all went, whoa. And then they were just like, oh my God, you like aliens? Like,
dropped from the sky.
That's what they thought we were. Like, you know, like they were just like, because we're in a helicopter, they'd never seen anything like it. And yeah, I was in that chopper, and I was in the front, so it was only myself and the pilot that could hear, because I had the headphones on, and the others in the back had no idea what was happening. And all the pilot, like, he's like, oh, that's not good. There's a warning signal that's come on, and I'm not sure what that is. And he grabs this massive book, and he throws it on my lap, and he's like, can you check this number? And I was like, I was like, sure. And then I said, oh, it says land immediately. And he goes, well, that's not great because we're over water. I'm like, yep. So we just had to keep flying for probably what felt like about 3 years, but it was about 10 minutes. And we saw some area where we thought we could land, and we're starting to descend, and we're like, okay, it's going to be okay. And it looked like land. And then we're just about to hit it, and we hear, him and I hear, warning, terrain, warning, terrain, warning, terrain. Like we're going to crash. And we looked at, and I said to him, there's what it was reeds over water. So it was actually it wasn't, so we were literally about to land in the ocean. Like,
oh God.
And you're speaking to someone who's severely scared of flying right now.
Oh, I can fix that, babe. It's okay.
You're very looked after. You know, have you ever asked the guides, you know, do you have a guide that you know about? Like, what is it?
I got so many. It's ridiculous. I channel, I'm thinking maybe Egyptian, Eastern Europe, Eastern type, like Arabic type sound that comes through. I'm not 100% sure who that is yet. They haven't like fully revealed themselves to me, but I also channel an Indigenous Aboriginal elder, like woman.
Wow.
And so when she comes through, she's so matter of fact. She's like this shaman, and yeah, it's really cool. And so I was actually at my son's school recently, and they were talking in the Kabi Kabi language, and I could understand it, and I was like,
no way.
It was like, what? I was just like, what just happened? Yeah. So anyway, that's just another story.
Just dropping that in there casually. It's like, and this is why when Liz said at the beginning of the interview, we like it was so difficult for Liz and I to figure out, well, which one of these many like huge experiences do we dip into? And we knew we weren't going to do any one of them in particular justice today by going through it, but it just shows. And again, all I feel is that you're, you know, everything in your life to this point, and maybe there's more to come, but those sense of extreme, like really extreme situations, and the connectivity to travel, like these have occurred all over the world for you. It's not just, you know, safely back in Wagga. It's like, you know, the little girl from the farm is now going all over the world having these extreme circumstances. I would love to know, so was there something then, again, another boom moment or a extreme moment that came that made you decide, you know what, I've done my time in the federal police, and you know what was the kind of journey to say, right, I'm now going to leave, I'm going to do something else, and talk to us about what that something else is.
Yeah, great question. Well, just like the rest of them, it had to be extreme.
Yep.
So
Okay.
I
Brace yourselves, listeners, brace yourselves.
well, it's probably not as bad as the time I drowned, but I
can't deal with these stories.
It's like, where we go.
I'm getting
my
anxiety.
God. I know.
Sorry, take some Valium before you listen. So this one is kind of like a two-pronged story. So I was medically discharged essentially, but I resigned because I didn't want to be on Comcare. I didn't want to be that person sitting in an office wasting away. That is not who I came here to be.
Sorry, Comcare?
So with insurance. So
yes, yeah.
So I injured myself in a police training accident.
Yeah.
And so I couldn't be operational again.
Got you.
And
Yes.
part of the reason why my injury was so extreme. So I tore from my pubic bone right through my hip flexor through to my sacrum.
Oh
and
my God.
Being attacked during a training exercise. And it was very painful for a long time. But I had also, so this is when I had just gone back after having my baby. I was like about 12 or so months after I'd had him that I went back. And so I was doing, the training to come back in, to be operational, sorry. And so part of it is about my birth trauma. And what happened was that I had a normal vaginal delivery, and the doctor sewed my vagina together in the middle instead of repairing my perineum. And
oh my God.
Then I had to have 4 months postpartum. I had to have full reconstructive surgery where I was like almost out of septicemia because my bowel wall had protruded and started to leak, and because of the way she had sutured me. And so it was already, obviously I was still healing from that, and so that whole area and the way the muscles worked and things like that, I'm sure, like, I don't think it was necessarily as a result of that, but energetically and emotionally, that was a very vulnerable place for me.
Yeah.
And so it just changed so much about being a mother and like being in a relationship and things like that, and all the rest of it. And I know that so many people have had these birth experiences that their power has been taken away.
Yeah.
And I knew there was something wrong with my body immediately. I knew something wasn't right, and no one listened to me. And so I ended up suing the government because it was at a government hospital. And yeah, I won that. And I was just like, it was 4 years that I fought them for. And when I healed from that, when I like resolved that, so much stuff came up and to be healed and things like that. And so, so I decided, you know what, I have so many gifts, and I really need to use these in the right way. I'm just like being able to help people and see, like, I'm a lot like a medical intuitive in a lot of ways. I can see and feel what's wrong with the body, and I told. So through my kinesiology, I ask the question. So I don't use muscle testing.
Okay.
I'm trained in that, as in like that's how I'm qualified in. But I ask the question, and then their subconscious speaks back to me, and so I hear it. And so I'm told, just go through the questions and I ask, and it just comes through. And so what I can do now in terms of helping people in love, in health, and all the rest of it is just so much more than who I was as a police officer.
Yes.
That was just an experience that I had to have for my soul and my soul's journey. And there are other people out there that are meant to do that and are just so fabulous at that job. And I just adore them and take, my hat off to them for keeping on doing that. So
We hear so much of that, Ali, from other guests we've had on the show as well. And I guess Liz and I are experiencing this in our own life too. It's like nothing is ever wasted. It doesn't matter whether it's your time in, Contiki, whether it's your time in the federal police. There's we're put in these scenarios, and we, you mentioned even about naturopathy and like going to be a naturopath, but not actually doing that as a job. But we lean on all these skills and all these knowledge and all this experience in different ways. We carry that forward in different ways with us. And it really stands out to me that everything that you've said also seems so connected to sacral chakra, from Lake Titicaca, where you had a huge experience, but your near-death experience, but also then the trauma of the the accident or the incident that led to you leaving the federal police as well. It's all of that is and I just imagine bringing that forward into relationships as well. There's a lot of, people who carry forward. And I guess because a lot of my work, coaching work, is trauma informed, the healing work I do, that's what I get pulled to. It's like your life experiences, and again, in the extreme of the extremes, then leads you with such power to be able to step into this and use gifts. So what does that look like for you now? Or where is that? What are the gifts that you've discovered first about yourself, and then how are you leveraging those?
Yeah, so it's a kind of like a three-way approach, if you like, because I use German new medicine, kinesiology, and human design, and I've created my own modality through that.
Wow.
And so, using those particular gifts, I also remove dark entities from people. And I feel like that is where the magic actually happens.
Yeah.
It's like people don't come back to me a lot of the time. I usually only see people once, maximum twice.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm going to have to stop you here.
Yes.
I know that there are going to be people listening that you've probably already scared to death. But no, I'm only joking. And let's just talk about what you mean by dark entities, because for me, going through and opening up spiritually, I just always had this huge fear about dark entities, ghosts, spirits, all this type of stuff. And, I know like even hearing those words like literally strikes fear in me. Explain this a little bit more. Removing dark entities. Do we all walk around with dark entities attached to us? And do people need to be scared?
Sure. You definitely don't want to be scared, because being scared is what's called an attachment mechanism. It's where they see your vulnerabilities and how they attach. And so there are many different types of the dark entity world. It's just I guess that's, for want of a better phrase of what you call it. So it's just like fragments of energy that block your evolution.
Got you.
And I feel like that's probably a better way for people to understand it. It's like, when water's murky, and then you look at the difference between like a murky pond or whatever, and then a clear ocean, and the difference between that, and how when you look at them and how the energy flows, and how
it's
the
like
water
a
flows.
denser.
Yes.
Yeah, denser. So it's not an actual like spirit attached as such. Or?
So you can definitely have like demonic realm, multi-dimensional realm.
Yeah.
You can have like sentient beings, like earthbound souls and things like that are attached to you and things like that. There is it is insane how big that particular world is. I would not call myself the expert in the world of that, because I feel like I was taught by the expert in the world of that. And
who do you like, was this a specific modality you learned? Was it like, I guess, what is the practice that you do for that?
So I was actually told by the person who I believe is the best in the world at doing this, that there aren't many people who are able to be at a dimension to be able to remove and work in that world, if you like. And it's something that I, like you, Liz, had really like, even though being in the cops and being around it constantly, man, there was some dark stuff there that, I really shunned from that for a long time. And then she was like, no, you're being called, and I'm being told I have to show you and teach you for free, because it's like, you are here to do this. And I was like, And then so that journey unfolded over about 12 months, and I just got like more light codes and more all kinds of things, different vibrations, and being out, and it just is so hard to understand. And it's like people come to see me and they're like, my life has completely changed.
Yeah.
And
Ali,
don't know why.
can you just look at someone or tune into the energy and find out if they've got an entity attached? So basically what I'm asking is, do I? Can you tell?
Hardly see you. I can hardly see you. It's so bad. No. I can, if I'm tuning into your energy. Yes, and especially if I'm asking the question, okay, what's here, what's this? Usually everyone has them, especially in the chakras. Okay, so fragments of energy that are just clogging that up. And so when you remove that, it's just like clearing the chakras out. It's just like they just operate and spin and work at a whole different level. And then once you work out what that attachment mechanism is, what it is that's bringing them in, for most people, it's something like fear, or it's like, I'm not good enough, or, all of those really like low frequency type feelings is how they attach in the first place, right? Because that's what they feed off, right? So when you remove that, it's just like this instantaneous. Like I had a guy who'd had a stroke and he couldn't walk or talk, and then I found out it was actually related to something that happened to him when he was 3, when he got lost in London, and I removed that, and there was an entity there, and then he was like completely fine.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I feel like we all need a session with Ali.
I think I can relate to this because I'm going through holographic kinetics training at the moment. And now this is like, I view it as an apprenticeship. It's not something that I'm going to be, it's not just to do a couple of sessions and you're done. But so like there is an element of that has to do with that. Now, I was exactly like Liz, exactly like you, where it was like, I don't even want to hear the word entity, but I'm also someone that I know I can hold space for a lot of darkness and help. Like I believe that transmutation of energy that occurs with that. And I think that's why I'm so on this podcast, and people that I, that I coach and do healing work with, it's about keeping your vibration as high as you possibly can. And if you're consciously doing that, there's less for the entity to either attach to or to feed on, or even even if I just look at it through the lens of mental health and well-being, you're ending up then that you're not in this place of where you're in that really deep, dark, depressive state, and you're continuing to stay in that spiral or spiraling downwards, instead that you're trying to find that way of spiraling upwards, where you're keeping yourself more conscious and more higher vibration.
Definitely, yes. So I work with removing them and then rewiring the neural pathways. And then I work with what's in alignment with your human design. So who did you come here to be? So the very end of it is just like that, right? Let's look at this. This is what your energetic blueprint is. This is your roadmap of how you're meant to be and show up and exist. So you just be in flow the entire time. And it's really that simple. And so now I'm using it for love. So I'm the human design matchmaker. And oh my God.
Oh my God. We need to know details on this, because, okay, if I look at the journey we've just taken, there's been so many extremes. There's been so many, like, quite frankly, horrific experiences. And now you're going into love and matchmaking and bringing all of your gifts to bear to, to help people in this way. So yeah, let us have it. How is this now that, fierce authenticity, or that fullest expression of yourself and your gifts?
Yeah. So it's something that I wanted to bring in back in around 2015, around conscious dating, around cosmic love. It was just like, I had an experience with someone that was mind altering, that real soul connection. And there was no feeling like it. And I've never felt like that since. And that kind of, it's okay, I'm single now, so I can say that. But that it was really this moment where two souls met and just never needing to change anything about the other. It was just like this perfect energetic match. And
can I throw a question here? Because this comes up sometimes in some of our other interviews and I guess research and stuff. because the term twin flame, so soulmates or twin flame, was it any of those? Is that, or do you feel it was more of a karmic connection? Like, what is there a label, so to speak, on that particular?
Awesome question, because I now, even though, so I'm also in the process of learning astrology properly. And so I'm going to be an astrologist soon. So I'm mixing that into it. But I don't believe in those things anymore.
Okay.
For me, it's about literally just energetic alignment. I do think that we've definitely crossed paths with people in previous lives and things like that, and they feel familiar to us. Our souls have definitely journeyed together.
Yes.
Definitely that is something. But that it really can be so as simple as looking at someone's profile, their authority, their strategy, and things like that in their energetic blueprint, and how you mesh them together. That they just, it's like when they come together, it's like fireworks. It's just, and it's not
like
just
that jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah.
My whole thing is that, I'm here to help people spread their wings, not their legs. Because if we actually...
Oh, I love that.
Brilliant.
So brilliant.
I think that's going to be the title of the podcast right there.
There is the title of the podcast, exactly.
Maybe it is. You'll have to wait and see. No, so that it's all these different practices and how we energetically attract love through owning ourselves and being so fucking magnetic that people can't not want to be around you. And that is all about what you're saying, Diane, is about that higher frequency. Yes. Because if you're sitting at a lower frequency or a mid-range frequency, whatever you want to call it, and you are trying to manifest someone who is not how you're feeling about yourself, that reality will never, ever happen. Yeah. Because you need to match that frequency to gain that reality. That's how the quantum works. It comes to you. You do not go to it. And so that's how we become magnetic. It's like there are so many different practices which I use with people in how to really embody that and get into who you are energetically, right? So that your frequency does rise. And so then when you're just operating at that, it just naturally happens. Like, yeah.
And it's just such common sense as well, isn't it? We all know, and we've been through it ourselves. We have friends that you can see from an outside perspective that they've attracted someone because of their state of mind or the fact that they're in a challenge at the moment, and you can feel the energy is lower and it's not good, and you know that it's not going to work out. Yeah. So as human beings, we put ourselves in these situations that are kind of torturing ourselves, right? Whereas I guess looking at it from what you're saying, it's just so smart for me. Look into someone's human design, see if you feel, if you fit, but more importantly, before any of that, focus on just basically pulling your vibration frequency as high as possible. It's just the same as manifestation, I guess. Yeah, it is. And I think a lot of the time there's a step that people miss when it comes to manifestation, and that's what's stopping it. And so, like, that's why it's so important to remove these trapped emotions from the DNA and shift the trauma that the conditioning has caused or whatever, or the events have caused. Because when you do that, I was thinking about this morning about how, like, our DNA is constantly responding to the energy it receives, right? And so if you're still sitting in the energy of trauma of what's happened to you and all the rest of it, you are going to consistently create the same thing. And it's the same thing with love. It's why people are constantly dating the same person just with a different name, right? Yeah. So it's the same concept. It's just applying it to love. And I guess the biggest thing for me, I'm a life path 3. I have 3s everywhere in my numerology. And it is about, being vivacious and fun and playful. I'm a projector. I'm here to play. I'm here to just literally laugh, if you like.
And we can totally feel
I just told you.
We can totally feel that energy off you. I think anyone listening, even if they're not seeing the visuals, they can feel that energy from you. And this is why you're in the middle of writing a book called Why the Fuck Am I Still Single? Is that correct?
Correct. Yes, it's just about finished. I started writing it 8 years ago, and it's just this journey. And now I've like meshed in how the end. I had to wait 8 years because I had to wait for that human design aspect to come in for it to be finished, to be able to write the polishing part of it. And this is how you find love.
Oh, I can't wait to have you back.
I'm
I just want to deep dive into this, I guess, to tie up everything that we've gone through today and just to, I guess, point people in your direction. You've got the book that's going to come out. You've got a podcast.
Yes.
You've got your website where all of your services are listed. Tell us where we need to go.
Okay. So my podcast is launching mid-September around Venus full moon, all in to do with the
perfect
and so the best place to go is alimckelvie.com, so just my name.com, and or Instagram ali_McKelvie on Instagram. I also have, because I'm the founder of the Wing Woman Collective, where you spread your wings, not your legs. By the way, full disclosure, you can actually spread your legs. It's just you can't do that first, all right?
Thank you for clarifying that.
Protocols, okay? It's a step. So, the Wing Woman Collective is also, I've started that page as well. I also have the Human Design Matchmaker, but it's a bit all over the place. So Ali McKelvie is definitely the best place to go so that you can get all the information from there.
And we will list all of that on our show notes for anybody that is just super interested to find out more. Ali, I just feel like I'm getting some, I don't know, there's some type of hit that I'm getting in the moment where I have to ask you this question. It's not something I normally do at the end. But if you were just to take your experience through life, I'm not going to ask you to summarize it, but if you were to pass on 2 pieces of advice or 2 tips just to anybody that might be listening today, what would those tips be?
I think the first one is to be able to love who you are and heal that self-worth. You need to know who you are. And so for me, that the way in which I show people is through their human design, through their gene keys, and who their soul came here to be. And that's how I teach people how to be in alignment with that. So I really feel like that was one of the, by far, the biggest catalyst for me. As a projector, my signature is success. And since I started to embody and totally be my design, because everyone's unique, right? I might be an energy type of projector, but everybody is unique. And so when you are your unique self, then everything aligns to you and comes to you, right? And so now, like, I'm having so much success in my business, in every area of my life. Like, so I know that I'm in alignment because that's my signature, right? For you guys, your signature when you're not in alignment is frustration. And when you feel that when you have like satisfaction in something, that is definitely to show you're in alignment. You being a manager, and Diane, you also have the element of the manifester. So it's either anger or peace.
Yes,
as well.
100%.
So
100%.
it's like really about presence and just being that real visionary leader, if you like, graceful leader. And so the second one, I think, piece of advice would be to, practice fearless expression, to really just open yourself up and just trust that no matter what comes out, as long as it's coming from what you're feeling and who you feel you are, the rest will unfold, and just completely trust that.
Wow. Great advice, Ali.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much. Honestly, we cannot thank you enough. It's just been an absolute pleasure. Your story is so bloody interesting. And we definitely can't wait to have you back. And for anybody listening, definitely jump onto social media, go and follow Ali, get ready for the podcast launch. I definitely suggest anybody that's looking for love, make sure you definitely go and follow. And for anyone listening to us today, do not forget to go onto your favorite platform provider and click the follow button. Don't just listen to one and forget we're there, because we have even, I guess not even going to say even more interesting guests. We have so many different types of guests, just like Ali, that just have these incredible and inspiring stories to share. Thank you so much for being here today, and we cannot wait to have you next time.
I'm so grateful for both of you. Thank you so much.
That's it for another episode.
Thank you for listening. Did you know that we are building a movement of 1 million people who are spiritual as fuck? We would love for you to join us. You can start by leaving us a review on Apple Podcast. Every month, I'm going to intuitively choose one person and do a psychic reading for you. So
follow us on Instagram, send in your stories and topic suggestions, and join the movement
at spiritual.a.f. Until next time.
This is a Guide Your Light network production, creating podcasts with purpose.